Good evening. It is Thursday, the 15th of July, 2021. I had to briefly check on my phone which day it was because this felt like one long Monday this week, as one of my colleagues put it earlier today. My name is Adriaan Basson. I'm the editor-in-chief of News 24. And this is the editor's table, a very dark and bleak week in South Africa's history. You're joining us for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us in this discussion with my colleagues. Qaanitah Hunter, our political editor, is joining me tonight. Kaveel Singh, our KwaZulu-Natal correspondent in Durban, is joining us tonight, as well as Sesona Ngqakamba, one of our news journalists in Johannesburg. Good evening to my colleagues. Thank you for giving us another hour of your time. This has been a crazy, crazy week, as I'm sure you all can attest to. We've been asked to cover a story which very few of us have covered in our careers. Not all of us are as young as Sesona, but I certainly have felt that this week brought uncharted waters and challenged me as editor of News 24 to make decisions and make calls and analyze matters in a way I haven't done before. It has been a tiring week so far. It has been exhausting. Always the risk of either overhyping a story or underplaying a story, and both would be fatal in a story like this. So we were very close to our reporters, to our editors, to you, our audience, who helped us immensely this week by sending us voice notes, pictures, and videos to help us report the truth, the ugly truth, as it played out on the streets of Durban, Pietermaritzburg, KwaMashu, Greytown, Vryheid, Jabulani, Dobsonville, Protea Glen, Jeppystown, and over 100 other names of towns, suburbs, and cities that were affected by probably one of the worst and ugliest chapters of South Africa's post-democratic history. As always, you're welcome to pose questions to me and my panel. We will try our best to answer them as good as possible. There's a button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. That doesn't stand for Qaanitah and Adriaan, but for questions and answers. So please hit that button and give us your questions that you may have. We will try our very best to give you as good answers as possible. I can tell you now already that we do not know exactly what happened this week. None of us on this panel. And I guess, you know, I would really be surprised if any analyst or journalist in South Africa at this point in time would purport to know exactly and conclusively what happened this week, what led to this week's very, very terrible and ugly scenes that we saw play out and that's still playing out in some of our streets. It has been a very hard story to cover. Like I said, it is a story that started a bit longer ago, but really a week ago when Jacob Zuma, the former president, was incarcerated, and the events that followed his incarceration. Of course, it's become something completely different, but I will ask my colleagues to explain why we say that. Qaanitah, as we sit here tonight, you and I were both in a briefing earlier today by the minister in the presidency. Can you quickly bring us just up to date? What do we know at this point in time in terms of what is still happening in South Africa, what the situation is like, how many people have been arrested, and importantly, how many deaths have been recorded in this week?
It's a week now, Adriaan, since the unrest began. Obviously, it intensified over the weekend, but Thursday last week is when we saw the first attacks. So far, there has been 117 people who have lost their lives in Gauteng and in KwaZulu-Natal, 26 in Gauteng and 91 in KwaZulu-Natal. Government has said that a lot of the deaths were as a result of stampedes during the looting, but also I'm sure Kaveel will speak about deaths as a result of live fire that we saw in some communities. There's been a total of 2,203 arrests in both provinces, more arrests in KZN with over 1,400 and Gauteng over 700 arrests. The most interesting news, Adriaan, I think that came out of the briefing was that one instigator, alleged instigator of the unrest, is said to be in police custody. And government said that they are police are surveilling 11 other people who they believe are at the heart of this unrest. There was an extra deployment today of 5,000 soldiers. So that means there are currently 10,000 soldiers deployed across the country. Although 25,000 soldiers is what the defense minister asked for, and that has been approved, but that deployment will happen at a staggered pace. And government says Gauteng seems to be recovering, basically there's not as much active looting as we saw in previous days, but KZN still remains volatile.
Qaanitah, one of the main questions that I've heard over the past few days, and one of the questions that's been plaguing me as well, is why the authorities seem to have reacted so slow, specifically in KwaZulu-Natal, that even as late as this morning, we still really didn't see soldiers on the streets of Pietermaritzburg or Durban. I mean, what's the best answer or explanation you've heard so far?
Well, government is saying that intelligence was not sleeping. That's the intelligence minister said they had forwarded intelligence, and almost saying that police did not act on that intelligence. The defense minister said to Parliament last night that government was caught almost with their pants down. They cannot be any glossing over the fact that authorities were late to act. If they were not late, if they acted promptly, you would not have 117 people dead and as many businesses looted and completely industries decimated across the two provinces. So definitely there was some sort of delay. Now, what is the genesis of that? What could it be? So the first one is intelligence failure. Intelligence did not pick up timelessly that this would be a well-orchestrated, what now government calls economic sabotage, well-orchestrated economic sabotage. The intelligence minister says, no, we picked up the intelligence, but definitely there was some sort of failure, particularly because of the level of devastation that you have seen. They're saying that actually it was far worse. The actual instigators had planned far worse. They've cited attacks on the harbor of Durban. They've cited attacks on electricity substations, on waterworks plants, as part of the sort of well-coordinated economic sabotage that they speak about. And they said that information helped them avert those attacks. That's the first part of it, intelligence failure. The second part of it is SAPS was completely and utterly under-resourced. Now, there's a very boring conversation, which a lot of people maybe have not paid much attention to. And that is the huge underfunding of SAPS as a result of the pandemic. And not only SAPS, the criminal justice system. So that what you have is a completely under-resourced police police service. You had police officers just simply uninterested in doing their work. And then you also had the other threat of COVID-19, right? And so Kaveel will explain what he saw on the ground, but what you saw in KZN is just complete police inaction. And the Gauteng Premier conceded that police were completely and utterly overrun. Then comes the question of soldiers. Where were the soldiers? On Monday, the ANC's NEC was having a meeting, and they were postulating about, we told you if you arrested Zuma, this was going to happen. Why was the defense force not sent in soon enough? The reality of it is we live in a constitutional democracy. There are processes that have to be in place as to why you would put the military. I mean, it's a very traumatic thing to have soldiers, among citizens, right? So it was almost as if government had to get to the point where police had failed before. And I think that was really where the failure of President Cyril Ramaphosa's leadership was, that the intelligence did not equip them to say police are going to fail given the nature of the unrest. You need to preemptively have soldiers. And your initial force was 2,500 because defense said that the initial intelligence was that key points were going to be attacked. So the defense force was the 2,500 soldiers was meant to protect those key points. Then they realized this is far bigger. They deployed another 2,500 soldiers yesterday. Then you saw a little bit more in Durban. You saw them in Alexandra, in Soweto, etc. And then today they realized this is far, far bigger than what we anticipated. Let's send another 5,000.
I mean, on the point of police in action, the speculation obviously remains on why police officers decided to enact. And we can speculate about that for the rest of the evening. And I mean, Kaveel, Singh, you were on the ground. You saw those police officers. And I'd like you to tell us about what you saw. But let's go back, Kaveel, to when the story, how it unfolded for you as our KZN correspondent. So on Thursday last week, a week ago, Jacob Zuma woke up in prison in Escort. Later that afternoon, if I'm correct, around 4 o'clock, we received the first messages of, I think it was trucks on the N2 coming down from Tongaat that was blocking some of the toll gates. How did the story, when did you get involved in the story? What did you see the story as in the beginning? And were you shocked at how quickly it escalated over the next 5 days?
I mean, Adriaan, it was completely shocking. It's probably one of the most difficult things I think I've ever covered as a journalist. I've covered the Fees Must Fall movement that began in 2016. And this was Fees Must Fall on steroids, beyond steroids. My involvement in covering the unrest began just under a week ago, last Friday, the day after Zuma was incarcerated. And there wasn't a great deal of tension in the city as there is now. I mean, at the time, there were pockets of very violent protests that emerged, particularly in the early hours of Friday morning. You know, it was a very cool, normal sort of let's get into the weekend day. I made my first stop at Fife Road in sort of the Morningside area. I also made my way to KwaMashu and Umgeni Road on the day. In Fife Road, I mean, they had been protesting from, like I said, the early hours of Friday morning. Umgeni Road, the Springtown community left Metro Police with a lot of work to do on the ground in terms of securing the area. And as you know, Umgeni Road in Durban is a real major hub. It's a real important sort of space that connects the city to the N2, to the N3 freeways, and it's got some of the busiest shopping centers in the city. In KwaMashu, the Qaanitah Highway, which is also the main highway to KwaMashu, the main road into the township, was blocked by protesters who threw bottles at my car and at others who tried to pass. Eventually we all had to find an alternate way out of the city, into the city. And from that point, we really saw tension build up. I think by the weekend, we heard a lot of reports of protests in various parts of the city, but also in the province. It had spread to the Mooi River area as well.
Kaveel, if I can just stop you for a second there, just tell us about the nature of the initial protests on Friday and also over the weekend. What were these, you call it protests? So, I mean, were these people with placards? Was it people singing? Was it people toy-toying? What did you see?
I think I stand to be corrected because, there weren't any placards. What it was sort of running skirmishes between people and police. So people would come down to specific spots, to these main spots, the main roads, Umgeni Road, Morningside, wherever it was, KwaMashu, Qaanitah Highway, and they would block the road. They would drop debris, they would burn tires, They would throw rocks. They would take sort of cement bins, break them, and spread it across the road. And the moment that authorities came through, by the way, it was just Metro Police on Friday that was visible. I didn't see any SAPs at all. So when they did this, Metro would come through and sort of disperse the crowd and maybe even go into those areas trying to look for instigators or suspects. But, you know, people would be gone. It would be completely empty. And police would sort of really open up the area. It would seem like it would be safe, but the crowd would just immediately come back and sort of block the entire space. And this continued and would eventually become the theme for this entire unrest that we're seeing now. You know, people just disrupting and leaving, disrupting and leaving. So, you know,
and that feeds into the very strong held and now formal theory that this was organized, orchestrated, instigated.
No, most definitely. I mean, even with just the pockets of communities that were having protests, those were very well organized protests. I even witnessed, News 24 was kind enough, and yourself, to send me up to in a helicopter on Monday during the beginning of the peak of the protests. And what I observed in I believe it was the Phoenix area, was a group of men coming in a very expensive 4x4, loaded with tires, dropping the tires on the road, lighting them up, calling people over and leaving. You know, extremely well organized. And it wasn't just any road. It was key roads where emergency services needed to come through. And yeah, by the weekend, it had really de-escalated in a lot of parts of the province. Like I said, the Moira area, very, very important sort of connect between Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, two huge economic hubs in the country. And police at that point by Saturday had made about 27 arrests, but things really started to get out of control by Sunday evening. You know, we found that things had escalated to quite a dangerous point from my home and from many people's homes in Durban. All you could hear were gunshots. All you could see were fires, burning, the smell of tires. It was so rife in the air. And at some points, you could even smell sort of the discharge of gunpowder or tear gas or stun grenades. You know, it's not something that you see in major parts of the city, but it was absolutely all over the place. And by the time we got into Monday, it was absolutely complete chaos. Sorry,
Kaveel, I just want to, I'm fascinated by your descriptions and by the timeline. When did what we initially called protests, then started calling unrests, turn into large-scale looting and plundering?
That definitely began on Monday. Well, actually, I would say it began on Sunday evening, maybe Saturday, Sunday evening, most definitely in the Durban area in particular. By Sunday evening, it was complete chaos. Whatever we heard on Sunday evening, what we saw on Monday morning paled in comparison to what we heard the night before. My first stop was the Point sort of beachfront area going into the city. And what I saw was what would become the formula for all of the looting and unrest to come in the next few days. You know, roads were strewn with debris, paper, rocks. I mean, there were even children's dolls. There were just so many strange items on the floor, bricks, plastic. But the worst of all was that supermarkets, retailers, any store really with anything of use was completely plundered and destroyed. And this wasn't just in the Point area, it was obviously in many parts of the city. And the Friday our protest was a much smaller sort of dress rehearsal for what was to come. Like you really brought to the fore in terms of the people starting these blockades and running away. It was very difficult for the authorities to sort of have proper control over that.
And my reading, Kaveel, of the situation in Durban and Pietermaritzburg is that on Monday it just completely boiled over and became another animal in terms of the nature of the unrest, which became a free-for-all looting. And I mean, another key point, which I want you to talk about, because we almost assume now that it's not the case, but let's just talk about it. I mean, those people who we saw on your footage and that you saw out of the helicopter that we broadcast on News 24, looting a macro store or Spar, filling their cars' boots with TV screens and tumble dryers and groceries. Are these Zuma supporters? Did they do it for Jacob Zuma? Did you speak to some of them? What was going on there?
I mean, I would say it was a combination of things. You know, I think initially it started off as they were very well planned Zuma instigators. I would definitely say that, you know, that happened, the timing of everything, the threats that came on social media from his very close supporters, from his children. It was very clear that this was a very intentional thing. In Durban, the looters eventually became a combination of different things. A few looters that would speak to me, because there weren't a lot that were very keen to speak to the media.
And we'll get to that.
We will definitely get to that, yeah, for sure. You know, there were definitely some people that were impoverished. What I really saw was that people who appeared to be poor or impoverished never really took random items. You know, they really grabbed specific things. We saw some people running out of baby food, essential clothing. However, it really devolved into opportunism and organized crime. In the Cornubia Mall, for example, on day one, on Monday, while I was in the helicopter, cars were lined up for kilometers, nice cars, luxury cars, middle of the line vehicles, and people who came prepared with these vehicles to carry as much as they could. There was actually a traffic jam in Cornubia that I witnessed from the helicopter because so many people came with their cars. There was just nowhere for people to go. They felt so emboldened by the lack of enforcement, law enforcement, the lack of authority, the lack of law, that people came through with their cars, with their vans. Some people apparently even hired vehicles to just loot. And yeah, it was just absolute chaos.
Kaveel, I want you to take a breather and maybe a sip of water. Sesona, you were our reporter in Soweto. Can you remind us, when did the outbreak of unrest start in Soweto, and what did you see? What was the first signs that something was very deeply wrong? And tell us where you went and what you saw and heard.
All right, thanks, Adriaan. I mean, I first got involved with this story on Sunday. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw that evening. I was on desk on Sunday afternoon from 3 p.m. and a news editor sends me a message: we need to rush to CBD because unrest from the previous night had now escalated. I rushed there. I hadn't even washed because I was at home the entire day. So I just took whatever I could and then drove to the CBD, and nothing could have prepared me for what I saw there. The roads were blocked. The town was gridlocked. You could see while driving past Park Station, buildings, people shouting from rooftops, peeping through their windows, throwing stones. I found JMPD there, completely not ordered. They were just taking it as it comes. There was no SAPS on the ground when I arrived. And then it kind of like started moving now because my colleague was also there throughout the day, a colleague of mine, Jeff Wicks, and it had moved in various parts, Hillbrow, CBD, Jeppestown, Malvern, until very late on Sunday. We left around 10:30, and the SAPS was now there, and GMPD. They shot so many rounds of rubber bullets until they didn't have any. A cop told us that they were actually running out of rubber bullets. And this crowd was trying to move into various shops to loot. Eventually, that was Sunday night, and it had spiraled over to Soweto. And now Soweto is the country's biggest township. And it's got over like...
Sesona, before you go to Soweto, you were almost hit by a rubber bullet.
Yes, Adriaan, I was almost hit by a rubber bullet.
What happened? Tell us.
So a Nyala came, it was speeding. There were lots of Nyalas speeding throughout the town, all over the town, to CBD. And I was standing in a corner, and it happened that the corner I was standing in, there were two gentlemen who were there. I think they were just trying to find their way home. But then at that point, JMPD did not know who was who. They just wanted everyone to just move away. So they started shooting, but luckily I ducked and dived, and then I managed to get out of the situation. Adriaan, but moving on.
Some of the things that we go through as journalists, eh?
Indeed. As I was saying, it had now spiraled overnight. On Sunday night, it moved to Soweto. Now, Soweto, as I said earlier, over 1.2 million residents. There's Dlamini, there's Meadowlands, there's Jabulani, there's Protea. And I first got there on Tuesday. On Tuesday morning, I was there. But on Monday, the looting had already started there. And when I arrived in Soweto on Tuesday, I could say I've been describing the streets. Everyone was pulling a trolley, be it filled with groceries, furniture. It was the first time I saw someone actually pulling a fridge. As I was driving, we were driving with my colleague, multimedia colleague, we were driving towards Dlamini. We came across this cash and carry superstore. And we found no SAPS on site. Residents were just helping themselves. We call them looters now because they were looting. They were looting anything you can ever imagine. I saw people packing bricks. They were packing bricks in their boots, car boots, and it was lawlessness. And at that point, SAPS was not there. But shortly after we arrived, SAPS and SANDF arrived. And you could see that people were not bothered when they first saw SAPS. They continued looting. SAPS was firing rubber bullets. But as soon as SANDF disembarked their vehicle, people started to get scared and run away. And I actually witnessed SANDF office members firing gunshots in the air, because we do know that they don't have rubber bullets. They are the army.
Do you think that's one of the reasons why the looters were not so scared of the SAPS? Or do you think it's a more general disrespect for authority that has set into our country?
I think maybe people are so used to, because there's lots of instances where SAPS have shot people, and they've really come under fire for doing that. So people now know that SAPS, I beg my pardon, would never just shoot at them with live round ammunition. Now, they knew that it's just rubber bullets, so they really couldn't be bothered. When we went inside superstore, there were still people inside. We were inside with the cops, and they were still inside. But as soon as SANDF came in, they started pulling out. And it's just a general sense that people have because of everything that's happened, Marikana, fees must fall. So they know that SAPS cannot shoot at them because they'll come under fire. And it was very sad, AB. I saw bodies at Superstore while the cops were trying to just make sure everyone had left the premises. We went inside the storeroom where we found a woman who was just laying there, and an officer told me that she doesn't look like she just died now. She had been there perhaps overnight, and pellets fell on her. And pellets that were carrying like maize meal, rice, and so she was all scattered with all those things. And the smell inside, and you could also see her body, like people were stepping on her because they wanted to get whatever was left. It was very touching, and you could see that there are those genuine people who are really needy. They need the food, but you could also see that they're opportunists. People were there for their other dealings, because I was talking to people on the ground, to managers of the stores. A manager actually told me today that on Monday morning, there were 2 vehicles that actually parked outside the Superstore cash and carry in Soweto. And they were drinking alcohol, they were celebrating, telling them that tonight it's going to be Christmas for them. But soon after that, they would come in, take whatever they want. And by the way, the instigators or the leaders, they go in for the big stuff. They go in for safes where there's money, they go for the ATMs, and then the poor people will go for the food. That's how the modus operandi. So they come in, they take whatever they need, which is mostly money. They run for the ATMs, the store safes, and then they call everyone else. Everyone else needs food. They come in, they take the food.
Sesona, I want to ask you the same question I asked Kaveel. These people were not there for Jacob Zuma.
Absolutely.
Sorry, let me ask a question. Let's me not say, make a statement. What, did you ever get the sense that these people were there to protest the incarceration of Jacob Zuma, or was this something else?
Absolutely not, Adriaan. The unrest it started about former President Jacob Zuma, but on the ground, one can see that some of the people don't even know Zuma's arrested and jailed. They are just there because they heard, especially most of the people I saw are elderly people. Most of them I saw there. They just heard that, okay, something had started in KZN, it's about Jacob Zuma. And then they were just riding along, going with the flow. And there were also kids. And I was saying to a colleague, thank God that all of this happened with schools closed, because pupils would have actually left classes and joined. And another resident I spoke with was saying to me, well, they arrested someone. As everyone knows, that some residents had gathered at Maponya Mall, and they were trying to protect, because Maponya Mall is one of the few that have not been looted in Soweto. And residents have really been trying very hard to protect the mall. And one of the community leaders there was telling me that they arrested one of the people who were there trying to check the coast. And when they asked him, well, do you know President Jacob Zuma? All they know about the president is that he's a former president, nothing else. So they don't know anything about the Zondo Commission. They don't know anything about the Constitutional Court's judgment. All they know is that it's former President Jacob Zuma. We are protesting. That's all.
So Mzwanele Manye is not telling the truth when he says South Africa is burning because of Zuma's incarceration. Kaveel Singh, I want to come back to you before I get to Qaanitah with some political analysis. Kaveel, there was a particularly scary moment. I think it was Monday or Tuesday morning. Like I said earlier, this feels like one long Monday this week. But there was a scary moment where we were on a WhatsApp group and I saw something at the macro in Springfield. Is it Springfield, right?
Correct. Yeah, around the Umgeni Road, Springfield area, sure.
And we said, can you quickly go check what's going on there? Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously there was a lot of unrest on that particular road because, like I said before, from last week, Friday, the residents at Springtown had been blocking the main road. And by Tuesday, it was just absolute chaos. It's very similar to what Sesona is describing. Absolutely, just thousands of people walking in and around and out, bringing cars in, bringing vans in, trolley loads of just grabbing whatever they can, including the solar panels at macros. So I was trying to get a very good angle of the burning of Value Center, a very popular shopping center on the Umgeni Road. And I had traversed the sort of the back of Umgeni Road to try and get my car moving because it was so blockaded at the front with traffic and cars. I hopped a couple of pavements, got to the back of the road. And while I was there, there were a few people that appeared to be watching me. I was trying to be as cautious as possible and had begun recording without putting my phone up. However, once I put my phone up, you can even hear in the recording, it was maybe up for about 2 or 3 seconds before someone's like, hey. And walking toward me on one side is a young man with a knife. And before I know it, there's 4 to 5 other guys on my blind side. And I'm surrounded by a bunch of men who are very unhappy that I'm there, very unhappy that I'm recording, and really want to see me harm. They were extremely threatening. They told me that I shouldn't be there. There's no reason for me to be here, that I should leave the area immediately. And 2 of them threatened to cut my face open. In no uncertain terms, pointed a knife at me, said, I will cut your face open. I said, listen, I will leave. I don't want any trouble from you guys. I'm out of here. As I got into my car, I could hear one of them saying, why are you letting him go? He can't go. Bring him back. Started the vehicle as quickly as I could, smashed on my bonnet quite a few times. And I got out of there, well, out of that sort of spot as quickly as I could. Wasn't out of danger yet because I was still sort of stuck in that area. And it was clear that they had been observing me for quite a bit of time. And we've noticed this with the unrest, that there are very small groups of people that are watching for media, that are really hampering journalists sort of getting the footage out there. And it was an extremely, extremely traumatic experience. It was very difficult to be a journalist in Durban this past week in general. There's one more thing I'd like to mention. Sesona just mentioned those bodies. It was something that I spoke to Qaanitah about as well. Something that really touched me very deeply and still gets me very emotional now when I'm even speaking about it. But yesterday, while I was at Nandi Drive, if you've seen any of the footage, was complete bedlam. There was just debris. Oh, it was difficult to see such a well put together industrial area that really serves the economy of Durban and KwaZulu-Natal and our country really in such tatters. But while there was a show of force from Premier Sihle Zikalala and a few of his MECs who were walking around Sihle Zikalala pointing to people, arrest that man, you come here, you do this. And since then footage has emerged and he's since apologized for assaulting a young looter in the Cateridge area earlier yesterday. While he was doing all this, while the MECs were walking around pointing their fingers at people, there were 2 bodies of two young boys who couldn't have been older than 13 to 14 years old, lying under that bridge since the night before, since Tuesday night. They had allegedly jumped from there during the chaos of the looting in Riverhorse Valley on Nandi Drive, and they had died on impact. And the security officials who had been there for days on end told me that no one had come there, no one had even been looking for the young boys. And it was just such a difficult thing to see, because police had eventually, for the first time, Johannesburg police had come to that scene to try and disperse the massive thousands of people that were there. And they were running skirmishes that I was part of the entire afternoon. I mean, MECs came there, the Premier came there, the police were just running, looters were running past these bodies. Police, all of us were just running past these bodies. I just couldn't, it was so difficult to fathom that we had gotten to this point where we lacked so much of humanity, where these two young boys were just lying on the floor. Very difficult. It was extremely difficult.
Thanks for sharing that, Kaveel. Qaanitah, this has also been a personal story for you. And I mean, as journalists, we have to create for our own sanity a bit of distance between our own personal lives and what we deal with every day, because it's harsh, cruel things that we have to see and write about. But it's also been a personal story for you, because you are from KZN. You've got family who are living there, who live in fear. How did you experience this week? How are you experiencing reporting on this story?
I've sort of, it's a surreal thing, because you almost, we have a good sense of detachment generally when as reporters, but in a situation like this, and I don't know how Kaveel is dealing, in the sense that you can't go home from the story. You're living in the story. Monday, frantic sort of calls from my sister, who had no nappies and formula for her, because I mean, you don't expect something like this to happen. The stores are within walking distance from your house. You can go and reach it at any time. But I think what really just sort of was rock bottom for me when I got the message that a friend of mine, a younger brother, had been shot in Chatsworth. We initially reported that he's 22, but he was 25 years old. I just remember him as a child. So I still, couldn't reconcile that in a drive-by shooting in that area, as they were trying to patrol the area at that time. And then also the suburb that we lived in, called Reservoir Hills. I don't think, Kaveel can correct me, I think there's sort of maybe one store that hasn't been looted and completely burnt down. It is, if you saw the scenes that came out from Reservoir Hills, it is absolutely disturbing. Petrol stations burnt down. I don't know any of our family or friends who have businesses that their businesses were spared. I don't know, not one. It is completely, and the thing is that because it happened, it's such a prolonged period now, right? So it was Sunday, then it was Monday, then it was Tuesday, Wednesday. Police, as government is saying now it's Thursday, and things are still volatile. But what you saw, for example, the community of Mayville, I had spoken to someone because the mosque there had burned down. And they said to me, what is so puzzling for them is that the nearby informal settlement had burnt down on the Thursday before. And what the mosque was being used as a premises to feed the people from the nearby informal settlement. And so it was breakfast, lunch, and supper. So this happened, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, I think Monday at 6 a.m. in the morning. And then by 8 or 9, the community members started streaming in because they needed to eat. And they looked in horror as to who from amongst us would burn the same place that was giving us food, because there's, and the on the phone with family members and hearing gunshots in the background. It is completely surreal. What worries me now is that you have a full-blown humanitarian crisis. Now it's people who were in the working class, people who were in the middle class, are now literally sort of have no food to eat. And what has kept me very hopeful today, at least, was the outpouring of kindness and support and community. My sister was saying that the queues are so long that you basically, if one person's going to the butcher, the other person has to go to the grocery store, and you have to, phone your neighbors and see what do they need. And I think that the recovery of this nation collectively is going to be underpinned by this level of community. But what really worries me is the racial tensions that are underpinning all of this. And Eddie, the thing for me, when I sit from a distance in the comfort of my home, fortunately not being directly impacted by what we see, you see the fault lines, every fault lines of our democratic society being ripped apart. So this is poverty, this is inequality, this is inherent racism, this is wanton criminality, the undermining of law enforcement, the complete and utter decimation of state institutions. You see all of it exploding in almost the perfect storm. And I think that for me, it's what made me so hell-bent, and you and I have worked very closely this week in trying to understand what is the bigger picture. What is at play here? Who are the people that are involved here? Kaveel, you said, the thing about the fancy 4x4s dropping off brand new tires. I can't tell you how many people have described and even sent us footage. Jeff and I were having that conversation about, there's no way that this cannot be, that this could, yes, looting is sporadic. And I mean, this is a conversation I had with friends of ours in KwaZulu-Natal, in Reservoir Hills, who live in the informal settlement. They said, which one of us would set fire to the mall? Okay, we looted, yes, people looted. But why would you burn something when we live next to it? So if the fire starts in the mall, it comes to where we live, And so that sort of that anecdote set me onto what actually is at play here. And then you find these really, really, really just completely disgusting, a disgusting situation where people who once fought for the democracy of this country being at the center of it. And when you realize the bigger picture is that none of this is random. There is no way. I mean, some of the pictures you see where water treatment plants in Pietermaritzburg, far away from where everyone lives, was set alight. The same.
Or cell phone towers.
Or cell phone towers, yes.
Or community radios in Joburg. Qaanitah, I do want to ask you, and I mean, this is obviously the $1 million question, and we haven't got answers. We simply don't have the facts yet. But we heard today that one of the so-called 12 instigators or 12 masterminds have been arrested. We don't know who it is. But you've written this week about Thulani Dlomo. I've also written about him in the past quite a lot. I mean, he's been a figure on our radar. He's been this spy in the dark. He's been this so-called Zuma's private spy who had millions, if not billions of rands at his disposal as head of the special investigating unit in the intelligence agency. You have a figure like this apparently being kicked out, and this is something I haven't explored with you, but let's go there. I mean, the Ramaphosa New Dawn was supposed to get rid of figures like this, right? And seemingly he was fired, right, from the SSA. But they didn't follow up. They didn't monitor him. And let's assume for a second that he's involved, because his name has been mentioned by our sources. But it wasn't follow up. This guy was left for 2-3 years, a spy master with billions of intelligence rands, assets, people, and vehicles at his disposal. Apparently, some of those vehicles are 4x4s. We're clearly not monitored, weren't surveilled, weren't followed up, we're not charged. If you read Sidney Mufamadi's high-level report, there could have been 20 criminal charges against him.
Yeah. That's
Would you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. And the thing is that the symptomatic of the reactionary nature of the Ramaphosa administration in all of this, in the sense that, number one, all of the people who are now there's, fingers are being pointed at, are people who are so emboldened, they publicly made these statements, inflammatory statements at Nkandla and elsewhere. If you look at President Jacob Zuma's children, Duduzane and Duduzile, publicly making statements inciting violence. The same for so many other ANC leaders, right? So someone like Thulani Dhlomo, who is notorious, he ran an illegal private army of intelligence, rogue intelligence officials for former President Jacob Zuma. There's no other way of saying it, right? This is someone who's a person of interest. We're not saying that he's a person of interest. This is what our sources are saying, that this is what the intelligence, and this has been confirmed by senior people in that circles, right? The reality of it is, what do we know about the instigators? We know the instigators are people linked to the ANC or ANC people, right? We know that they are, Zizi Kodwa said to us yesterday, and it was, we ran the story this morning, that all indications point to the fact that the people at the center of these operations are people well-trained in Umkhonto we Sizwe tactics, in the sense that the same way they would have fought against the apartheid government is what they're doing now. That it is not random that you would try to attack substations and cell phone towers, and even plan an attack on city halls and Durban Harbour. What you also know is that the intelligence that government received and we understand is that Johannesburg was never part of the plan. That's why what you saw in Johannesburg had a slightly different flavor to what we saw in KwaZulu-Natal, in the sense that it was just wanton criminality in Gauteng, rather broadly. But what you saw in Durban and surrounding areas was targeted, what government is now calling economic sabotage. And the reality of it is that Bheki Cele conceded that you can arrest thousands and thousands and thousands of looters, but it's inconsequential if you do not get to the center of what was behind this. And the reality of it is that there was enough public threats that the country was going to be made ungovernable as a result of not only Jacob Zuma's incarceration, but I mean, Ebi, let me just take a detour in my thought very quickly and say to you that if you are someone like Thulani Dhlomo, or you are someone who, like Dudu Myeni, for example, people with real charges that they're going to face. I mean, someone like Dudu Myeni is not going to face something, small. What she did at SSA is massive. What SAA, what Thulani Dhlomo did at Special Ops Unit in the SSA is, like you said, there's 20 charges there. All of these people are looking at the incarceration of former President Jacob Zuma and are terrified to their core of what is going to happen to them and the people around them. And so you will do everything in your arsenal to undermine the state, to create havoc, to lead the state to failure so that you don't have to face consequences. We cannot overstress the importance of what would be the personal interest in setting an entire economy alight. Why would you want to do that? That's not a political cause. That's self-interest. That is you on a path of self-preservation. You know what you did in the 9 wasted years, and that's why you would go to the levels that we see now.
And you abuse the fault lines in our society, which are real and which we should address.
And the fault lines that you governed over, So it's not like you saw the racial tensions and the inequality in the communities of Phoenix when you were mayor of KwaZulu-Natal. You saw it. What did you do? Nothing. But what you do now, you go and exploit that fault lines for your own political interest. And that, for me, I think, is the real issue at this, in that is that the people that were in charge, this, I don't know if I'm verbalizing it right? But basically, the same people who were in government and failed the people use their failure of the people to bring down bring down the country.
It's like that famous Adriaan Zuma video clip, I think from TikTok yesterday or Instagram, where he goes on about, we shouldn't be surprised because there's so much poverty and unemployment in the country, when his father and his friends and business partners directly impacted that unemployment and that poverty that has led to the scenes we saw this week. What is the latest number, Qaanitah, that Paul Holden, sorry, I'm putting you on the spot here, but the latest cost on state capture, the latest amount of money that we lost? I think, I'm speaking under correction, I think it's 50 billion.
Yeah, 50, that the amount is around 50 billion. And the reality of it is that not only the fact that poverty and unemployment and inequality persisted in the Jacob Zuma years, it was exacerbated by state capture. And
exactly.
so the reality of the situation is you presided over the fault lines, you saw it, and now you're exploiting it for your own self-interest. And that is the shame of this entire unrest that we've seen over the last week.
I want to go to some of the viewers' questions. I didn't forget about you. I'm sorry, but I was captivated by my colleagues' answers. I'm sure you were too. So I want to keep them talking. But I'm going to go a few minutes over 8, if you would excuse us, and just get to some of your questions. And then I want to ask each of my colleagues, Sesona, Kaveel, and Qaanitah, to end with a story of hope. We cannot leave our viewers and our colleagues here tonight with these depressing, dark thoughts about what's happened this week. It's been a tough week, but there has been signs of hope. And Qaanitah, you and Kaveel have referred to some of those. So I want each of you three to think about one story of hope that you can end with tonight. But let's go to some of the questions from our viewers. Okay, I'm gonna start from the top. Sharon Richner. Sharon, thank you. You're asking, in addition to the great inequality and social deprivation of the poor due to multiple lockdowns, who has been directing this movement from the shadows? I think Sharon, Qaanitah had a powerful answer to your question in our last segment, so I'll go to the next one. Thank you very much for that. Putela Myeni. The majority of manufactured goods looted are imports. Calm may return eventually, but if we build more factories and manufacturing hubs, can this potentially offset the level of joblessness and frustration among the general population? Qaanitah, do you want to take that?
I think that what you see, what happened over the last week is going to set us back in ways that are unimaginable. And I think it's going to exacerbate existing problems. You know, COVID-19, we didn't think things could get worse than what they already was. And the devastation that is going to persist as a result of what we saw happen over the last week is unreversible at this point. And I think that you're going to have to see a complete shakeup of what the status quo is in terms of government. You need to literally, it has to turn completely on its head to see any workable solution.
Putela, I must say, when I read Fin24 this week and some of those absolutely heart-wrenching stories of business owners who lost everything, Qaanitah spoke of some of them earlier in her own family and circle. Kaveel spoke about them. You know, these are people who cannot just simply open another store or another manufacturing plant or another textile factory. These are people who has lost everything. And this is not only the owners of those businesses who are going to suffer, it's the employees as well. It is the shops who used to sell their produce. It's got an entire knock-on effect. And I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration tonight to say that the economy of specifically Durban and Pietermaritzburg has been destroyed to a very large extent. If you listen to some of those numbers mentioned by Ngqakamba Hunter, the mayor, yesterday, 20 billion rand in GDP that's been lost. That's not something that you're going to recoup overnight, if ever. But we are going to end with good stories, I promise you. Joyce Mokwena, it's hard to believe security cluster ministers, SSA, seem to drag their feet to sabotage the government. Trucks damage on the N3 could have been prevented. I agree with that, Kaveel. I think the N3 and specifically that Mooival Toll Plaza has been such an obvious place where looters and troublemakers would have gone. Kaveel, have you got any clues, or can you get us closer to the truth of why there wasn't prevention on the weekend at places like Mooi River? Help me here, Mooi River, yes.
You know, no one's really sure exactly why the authorities couldn't sort of get to that area and stop that. But Mooi River has been quite troublesome this year alone. There was a huge trucking strike. We saw another huge economic dent where there were, I can't remember the exact number, but there were, I'm pretty sure, over 50 trucks that were burnt over that period, that were set alight over that period of time. And there had to be a massive intervention from government, I believe, even from a national level, to sort of really get together with the trucking industry, with the aggrieved parties, and try to deal with that. It's definitely a point of concern and an area that the authorities really, really need to look after a lot more.
Kaveel, while you have the mic, Anonymous is asking, can you comment on the situation in Phoenix? The Phoenix massacre hashtag has been trending on Twitter. Please, Kaveel, because we know that Twitter does not employ any journalists, so please don't rely on Twitter for your facts, dear viewers and readers. Kaveel, you were there. You were in Phoenix. You were there today again with Minister Cele. What, according to your knowledge, do we know factually happened there?
I mean, in terms of the facts, the first thing that we do know is that 20 people so far we know of that have lost their lives due to the unrest just in the Phoenix area. The police minister, Bheki Cele, is very shifty about primarily blaming those deaths on racial issues. While there was quite an uproar on Twitter today regarding Phoenix, there have been a lot of fake videos going around. There have been a lot of fake voice notes that the minister also mentioned today during his briefing at the Phoenix police station, where even the eThekwini mayor, Ngqakamba Hunter, he went to the Phoenix community yesterday and he engaged with the Indian community and the Black community. And a video clip of him went viral where he purportedly said, now with masks over someone's mouth, you know, people are just manipulating audio. And in the audio that was manipulated, the fake news audio, he's saying, you've got to go to malls, you've got to go to Indian people's homes and you've got to shoot them. But that never happened. Those messages never went out. And the police minister did say there are certainly connotations of racial issues, but that's been throughout the city during this unrest. You know, obviously with the Group Areas Act, a lot of racial groups are still separated in Durban and throughout South Africa. So what's been happening is that communities have created these community roadblocks to prevent looters, to prevent criminals from coming into these areas. Unfortunately, in some of these community blocks, people have been profiled. Black people have been told to turn around and go. And you obviously cannot have that. But the Phoenix situation isn't fully, it wasn't a massacre. It wasn't according to the police minister, it wasn't people, and even the community members. I spoke to one of the community leaders in Nkosi Mshlongo today from Zwelisha, and he said that, our issue is that we want these blocks to go down. No one's going into homes and attacking people. They're not coming to us and attacking us. We want these blocks gone. We want to be able to go to work. We just want to get back to normal. So that's the crux of the situation. It was really hyped up on social media, but there hasn't been any evidence of people intentionally sort of going and shooting people. There have been live rounds fired, though, in Phoenix. I spoke to Mr. Bradley Singh, an MPL, former councillor in the area and a current resident, and he said that there are certainly very racist elements within the community, people firing off rounds illegally. But he said that it's not the vast majority, and that there is a lot of cohesion. A lot of Black and Indian people have been living together for a very long time in that community. However, the racial tensions in Durban through these community blocks, like the economic effect, it's going to last for a very long time. I've personally never seen this sort of tension before. Between races, not just Indian and Black people, Indian, Black, white, colored, everybody, because everyone's trying to protect their communities. And communities are still very much racially segregated in a lot of areas. So yeah, that's the crux of what's been happening on the ground with that. The minister will be back there tomorrow engaging those communities at a more personal level.
Qaanitah, I think the next question kind of connects to what Kaveel has just said. The question is, South Africa, a tale of two countries. What happened this week reminded me of Charles Dickens' this novel. When some are concerned about the negative perception that might deter investments, others justify these acts due to economic hardship. What cultural change needs to happen so that we have a shared vision for this country?
I think that what this unrest can do is bring people closer together in a way that now it's a humanitarian situation where people have to work together to feed one another, right? And I think that what you saw this week is also a reminder that we have failed our poor people. We have, and so while like I said, all the fault lines in society have been exploited at this, which the race relations issue falls in that. At the same time, I think that there is a level of healing that has to involve cohesion, that has to involve dealing with inequality. And I think that when I say that things need to turn on its head, I mean the political system that enabled the inequality and poverty and racial segregation to persist 30 years into democracy, it needs to turn on its head. It really, really needs to turn on its head. And I think that for a lot of people, especially people who in the midst of it, communities around Springfield Park, around, these industrial areas that were heavily affected. I think when they probably have woke up today, they woke up to realizing that it is bleak and it's going to be bleak for a very, very long time. And I think that if I just want to maybe jump the gun and add my story of hope now.
Please take us there. Take us there. We are ready.
Because I'm getting a little depressed, but I mean, what I thought was absolutely incredible is there's definitely food shortages in Durban as a result of the looting, and just to have community members, someone that I grew up with started a WhatsApp group just to coordinate baby formula and milk, and now it has turned out to be a complete drive where you can come and pick up a little sake of formula and a little envelope of nappies for your children. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Just the level of your civic duty, and I think that what has to come out of this is that we have to all realize that we can't live in our own bubble. the question mentioned, the sort of tale of two worlds. I think this now is a call for us that we cannot be living in our little pockets, whether it is class pockets, privilege pockets, race pockets. We need to, as people, realize that this has a direct impact on the future of South Africa. And so I think I've been completely exhausted by the week, and I'm also a COVID survivor. But tomorrow I'm going to take an hour or 2 hours, and I think that if you agree, I'm going to go to Alexandra and help sweep tomorrow. I think, and whoever's watching this, maybe that's what's going to make us feel better. And I think COVID has shown us that we do feel better by helping other people. So I think I'm going tomorrow to go sweep streets, whatever you can do. I really think that all the viewers of News 24 can come together and help make this world a better place.
Wonderful note to end on. Sesona and Ngqakamba, tell us your story of hope, of something you've seen and that you cling on to, that we will get through this.
Right, Avi. But before I get to the story of hope, I think I'd like to say this week should be a learning curve for everyone in South Africa. It should be a learning curve for people in poor communities too. I mean, sure, they are needy. Everyone is in dire need for lots of resources, and government is to blame for that. But what has happened has really shown me personally, and I was actually speaking to a colleague saying, what would happen if there would be a war in South Africa? Is our law enforcement ready for that? I mean, these were only happening in Gauteng and in KZN, but it was chaos. What would have happened if it had spiraled over to Port Elizabeth, Gqeberha, Qonce, Cape Town? We need our law enforcement agencies to step up, especially SAPS. We can't rely on SANDF when there's SAPS who are supposed to be enforcing the law. We need them to step up. But as a story of hope really is, for me, I was driving today. I was actually writing the story earlier on. I was saying 2 days ago, the streets were just filled with trolleys, people, with food and furniture. But today I really saw community members standing up with brooms. It was a change of scenario. Everyone had the brooms, heading to a mall, heading to a garage, a spaza, just to lend a hand and sweep. And a touching story is an employer told me that, he's lost everything, but he has 230 employees, and he has promised that he will do his best to build, to rebuild, and employ them again. And that really touched me. I mean, there's 230 jobs. At least there's some form of hope. Yes, it will take some time, but there is that form of hope that we can rebuild. And if you can stick to that positive energy.
Thank you, Sesona. Kaveel, is there something that you saw or heard today that put that smile that we are seeing right now on your face?
It's hard to sift through the chaos and try to find something positive. But I think very similar to Qaanitah and Sesona, today it was very different. I mean, to be on the ground here, the vibration of everything has been so tense since last week. And to have today was sort of a slight release, because even though there are a lot of food shortages, there's fuel, we're short of everything at the moment in KZN. There are still people, neighbors, going to one another. Hey, I'm going to the store. What do you need? I'll get it for you. And people are standing, friends of mine have been saying in WhatsApp groups, they're getting to stores at 6 a.m. and they're only leaving there at like 1 in the afternoon for fuel, for food, for all these sort of things. So for people to sacrifice their time, and a lot of stores are very limited with what they have. So you can only get a certain amount of things, and they're willing to give half or a quarter of whatever they have to their neighbors, their friends, their relatives, whoever. My neighbor actually My partner's also a journalist, so we've barely been at home this entire week. It was so heartwarming. I've got a great story for you. She made an entire sort of saucer of roti for us, super, super fresh. And she brought it in and she's like, you guys are doing so much. I'm seeing you out there. I mean, a small gesture like that made such a huge difference. We've barely been cooking at home. We've barely been doing anything at home. To have someone do that, it was just magical. It gave us so much of hope.
And that is exactly why we will get through this. That's what I hang on to, is that the majority of South Africans, I truly believe that I'm not just parroting the president. The majority of South Africans want this country to work and want to work together. And those pictures today of bread trucks arriving from Johannesburg in Durban, of people sweeping the streets, has really given me hope and something to cling on to. And we will continue to tell those stories. Zelda Lagranzi, thank you so much for your comment. Thank you everyone for the sterling reporting and work you did this week. We all weep, but your stories and courage inspire immensely. This has been an incredible experience. I certainly have learned a lot from you, my colleagues. If we were around my table tonight, as I hope we can soon be, I would have given each of you a hug and a mug with something hot, whether it's tea or hot chocolate or coffee, whatever you like. Hopefully we can do that shortly in the future. Thank you so much for what you guys have done this week. Thank you for your reporting. Thank you for putting your lives, your bodies and your minds at rest to tell this story that our nation has to hear. Thank you so much to our News 24 subscribers and viewers. You guys are helping us to build a sustainable future for factual, accurate journalism. Thank you so much for your support. We are doing this for you and we will continue to tell the story of this nation we all love. Thank you so much for joining us and have a good night. Good evening.